Good morning, everyone, distinguished participants. I am Richard Kelly, and I will be your co-moderator for this interesting session today. Tourism offers a novel experience, whether it be the breathtaking biodiversity and seas of Latin America and the Caribbean, or the iconic cities, stunning landscapes, and historical monuments of Europe. The fact is, tourism is the lifeblood of many economies. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected all economic and social sectors around the world, especially the tourism sector. Given its importance to the economies of Europe and Latin America and the Caribbean, UNDP and the EU-LAC Foundation joined forces in hosting this side event on the margins of the United Nations General Assembly entitled Digital and Inclusive Innovations to Mitigate the Impact of the COVID-19 Pandemic and Sustainably Transform Tourism in Latin America, the Caribbean, and the European Union. For a new paradigm in tourism, the call is for transformation, a thinking revolution, massive change to perception, digitalization to achieve innovation. So, from Anna, Barrera, and I, who are your moderators today, a warm welcome to you as we take you on a paradigm-shifting journey. We are joined today by 6 inspiring and knowledgeable speakers, 2 of whom will pique your interest with their opening remarks, and the other 4 will share their thought-provoking responses to pertinent questions during the panel segment. This event is being streamed on Zoom, Facebook, and UWE-TV, and we have translations in English and Spanish. So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Luis Felipe Lopez Calva, Assistant Administrator and Regional Director for the Bureau of Latin America and the Caribbean of the United Nations Development Program, to bring remarks.
Thank you very much, Richard. Good morning, everybody. I want to start by extending a warm welcome and our gratitude to Her Excellency Clarice Modeste Corwin, Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation, Climate Resilience and the Environment in Grenada, Mrs. Natalia Bayona, Director of Innovation, Education and Investments at World Tourism Organization, Mrs. Misa Lavarille, Policy Officer for Tourism, the European Commission Directorate General, Internal Market Industries, Entrepreneurships and SMEs, and Mr. Robin Russell, First Vice President of the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association. I want to send our gratitude also to all of you who are joining, and I want to start by giving a special a welcome and a sign of gratitude to our colleague and friend, Leire Pahin, President of the EU-LAC Foundation, because she has trusted us to start this series of events, which are part of a firm, strong, solid conviction for collaboration to try to help countries recover and build a better future in our regions. It's really, really a pleasure to work with your team, Leire, and thank you for that. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected all economic and social sectors around the world. Tourism, as Richard in a way already mentioned, involves 2 aspects that COVID-19 pandemic most severely affected: mobility of people and personal interactions. When people want to go on tourism, they want to interact with others. And that's precisely what we couldn't do during the pandemic. So not surprisingly, it has been severely affected since March 2020. Restrictions were imposed by governments to control the spread of the virus, leaving borders closed to non-essential travel in many countries for several months in 2020, 2021. There has been a drop in 73% in international tourist arrivals. In 2020, 64% contraction in international tourism receipts in real terms. This is not trivial. According to the World Tourism Organization, 2020 has been the worst year on record for international tourism since 1950, ending a 10-year period of sustained growth since the 2009 financial crisis. And 62 million people employed in the travel and tourism sector lost their jobs. So we hope to start with this event, which is one in a series of events that we will organize together with the EU-LAC Foundation to precisely open this conversation about this crisis, its effects, the recovery, and very important, how to take this as an opportunity to rethink tourism. So our office in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean at UNDP conducted a dialogue to understand practices, promote sustainable tourism, and some of the results of that consultation I would like to highlight today are very, very important. So first message is, it's really a time and an opportunity. We have an opportunity to rethink the tourism industry. We cannot go back to business as usual in the tourism sector. The pre-pandemic tourism industry overall was not as inclusive and sustainable as we would like it to be, to say the least. And it has been very important that in the regional policy dialogues with actors from all the different sectors of the tourism value chain, the conclusions lead to the idea that we should focus on digital transformation, diversification of tourism product offer, stakeholder engagement, and regional coordination. And finally, the most important is the support to micro, small, and medium enterprises to become digital, with a heavy focus on supporting women-led businesses. A second message is that we need to accelerate the digital agenda as a condition to respond to the challenges emerging from this pandemic. We in UNDP have been accompanying, for example, Dominica in a journey to respond to the challenges that emerged from the pandemic. Last October, Dominica was the first country in the world to pilot UNDP's new digital readiness assessment tool, developed to assist governments with taking stock of their digital transformation pathway and to identify priorities and gaps across governments, business, ecosystem, infrastructure, regulatory environment, and human capability in general. The Prime Minister of Dominica has prioritized digital transformation to leverage the power of technology to create jobs, improve services, catalyze post-COVID-19 recovery, and ultimately to jumpstart the country again towards becoming the first climate resilient nation in the world. So UNDP has been collaborating to develop a national digital transformation strategy based on that assessment with a whole of society approach. Likewise, the government of Grenada is setting policy priorities to lead this digital transformation across sectors. Grenada also piloted the same assessment, aiming at providing the government with essential insights into Grenada's digital strengths and weaknesses. Building on this, the government and UNDP led the Smart Small Grenada vision, which focuses on integrating approaches to disaster preparedness, resilience, and natural resources, economic growth, driven by government's commitment to innovate. It's very important to say in the message 3, and I only have one more, don't worry, I'm not going to extend more too much longer, is that micro, small and medium enterprises represent up to 90% of the businesses in the tourism value chain in the Caribbean region. This is very important. So it is crucial for them to have access to digital solutions to respond to the current market demands. So of course, micro, small and medium enterprises have been affected during this pandemic the hardest, as many of them had to full stop operations for months, had limited or not existing access to digital solutions or to finance to sustain those periods without economic activity to respond to the current market demands. Within this context, under the umbrella of the Future of Tourism project, UNDP Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean designed a business adaptation program in partnership with the University of West Indies, Open Campus, and the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. This program has provided the opportunity to almost 400 micro, small, and medium enterprises to receive open training on digital technologies, financial planning, and marketing. From those 400 small businesses, 165 are currently receiving technical assistance and one-on-one mentoring sessions. The message 4 is that the effects of the pandemic over the tourism industry across the LAC region have been substantial, and women, who make up 60% of workers in hotels and restaurant industry alone, with 80% of them informally employed, have been hardly hit. And this is a very important element to have a gender lens in the reconstruction of a vision for the tourism sector. So it's estimated that 45% of workers in the hotel and restaurant industry lost their jobs during the time that I mentioned before, and the recovery efforts need a gender lens, and we really want to insist on this aspect as crucial in this new vision. So this is a defining moment for policymakers' commitment to sustainable development in our region. Equal attention needs to be focused on taking advantage of technical and digital innovations, female leadership for all programs and initiatives, and the training of staff and practices for the achievement of gender equality, to enhance technical capabilities, and to promote sustainable transition of tourism. So thank you again to all the wonderful panelists. Thank you to the EU-LAC Foundation, and let's start this conversation that is crucial for the region. Thank you.
In the true spirit of tourism, noticed that in the regional director's speech, he hopped over to Grenada and Dominica. He rethink tourism, the digital agenda, creativity, and innovation. He stressed these important initiatives. I told you that Luis Felipe would pique your interest with the informative paradigm shifting opening remarks. It is equally a delight at this time. Thank you so much, Luis Felipe, for your opening remarks. It is equally a delight to welcome Ms. Lere Pahin, President of the EU-LAC Foundation and is Global International Development Director, Chair of the Reds Chapter of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and a member of UNSDSN Strategic and Leadership Council, to deliver her paradigm-shifting remarks. Over to you, Ms. Pahin.
Thank you so much. Good morning to the European participants, and good afternoon to the Latin American and Caribbean people. Querido Luis Felipe, es un placer para mí, un enorme placer poder volver a participar en un side event, en un panel con mis amigos de UNDP, del Buró de América Latina y el Caribe, con el que tantas veces he colaborado y he trabajado a lo largo de mi vida profesional. Un enorme placer seguir trabajando juntos en esta asociación estratégica y, por supuesto, poder compartir esta tarde este panel. Excellency Minister Clarice Modest-Curwen, thank you so much for joining us, for your important participation. Estimada Natalia Bayona, estimada Misa Barile, estimado Robin Russell, queridos amigos y amigas. Empezaba este panel diciendo que era una enorme satisfacción personal volver a colaborar con el Buró de América Latina y el Caribe del PNUD en un contexto especialmente complejo, donde sumar sinergias y tejer alianzas es más importante que nunca. Vivimos en un contexto donde todavía hoy los efectos de la pandemia del COVID-19 han generado consecuencias devastadoras para todos los países del mundo, implicando pérdidas de millones de vidas, una recesión económica sin muchos precedentes en los últimos años e impactos sociales muy severos. Y además, esta pandemia ha vuelto a poner de manifiesto, en primer lugar, las fuertes desigualdades que existen en nuestros países y entre regiones, y también ha vuelto a subrayar la enorme vulnerabilidad de algunos sectores de nuestra sociedad. La pandemia, lo decía Luis Felipe, ha golpeado especialmente a las mujeres, que seguimos estando en primera línea en la respuesta del COVID, en los hospitales, en el sistema de cuidado, y por tanto hemos tenido que soportar en nuestros hombros una vez más ese doble impacto de la pandemia, de la enfermedad, pero también de la responsabilidad y del cuidado. Hemos estado doblemente expuestas. Lo mismo ha ocurrido con aquellos niños y niñas de hogares que no tienen acceso a Internet y que no han podido seguir sus lecciones escolares, de aquellos hombres y mujeres que han perdido su empleo o que no tienen protección social. Y por eso es importante que hoy, una vez más, sumemos esfuerzos para salir de esta crisis fortalecidos y con una mirada especial a aquellas personas más vulnerables. En este contexto, como también se ha hablado, ha habido una fuerte crisis de movilidad. Una movilidad que ha afectado fundamentalmente a uno de los pilares económicos más predominantes en América Latina y el Caribe, pero también en Europa, y que ha tenido que ir adaptándose a las medidas de seguridad y de salud del COVID, como es el turismo. Un turismo que ha visto irrumpido claramente sus flujos normales. Hablaba Luis Felipe del récord de viajeros que habíamos tenido justo antes del COVID, y que ha tenido que ir adaptándose con turismo interno y poco a poco adaptándose a las medidas que nos hacían posible esa movilidad. Una crisis de movilidad que todavía hoy no ha acabado y que tenemos que tener en cuenta a la hora de poner soluciones innovadoras encima de la mesa. Como se ha dicho también, en el 2020 se registró a nivel mundial una caída en llegadas de turistas internacionales del 73% y una contracción del 64% de los ingresos por turismo internacional en términos reales. Eso quiere decir que alrededor de 62 millones de personas empleados en el sector turismo y en el de viajes han perdido su trabajo durante el 2020 y que alrededor de 32 millones de personas cayeron en la extrema pobreza en el año 2020. Por eso es importante que miremos especialmente a este sector, porque el impacto ha sido mucho más perjudicial a aquellos países que dependen en gran medida del sector del turismo por su peso en el Producto Interior Bruto. Países, como decía, especialmente en América Latina y el Caribe y en Europa. ¿Qué les va a decir una española que conoce bien cuál es el efecto devastador de los problemas de la crisis de movilidad en el turismo en su país? Por eso, desde EU-LAC y desde el PNUD queremos centrar nuestra mirada en esta situación, analizar las políticas posibles para salir de ellas fortalecidas, analizar las buenas prácticas desarrolladas en algunos países, compartirlas y, sobre todo, tener clara cuáles deben ser algunos de los caminos que nos den luz en este contexto. Por eso hoy contamos con la participación de la ministra de Turismo de Granada, quien representa también una región que tiene una clara vocación turística, pero también hemos querido invitar a la Comisión Europea y al sector privado. Nos parece fundamental que todos los actores del mundo del turismo estén hoy aquí representados. Es verdad que pese a estos impactos severos y todavía la incertidumbre que hoy tenemos, incluida el acceso a las vacunas de muchos millones de personas todavía y del acceso a los sistemas de salud, tenemos que mirar y tenemos que tejer una mirada positiva para intentar salir de aquí reforzados. Es una oportunidad también este contexto para generar cambios en la manera de actuar de los inversores, de los empresarios, de los empleados, de los clientes, de los viajeros y de los consumidores, y apostar por una salida clara hacia la sostenibilidad. Por eso también es importante la participación hoy aquí de la Organización Mundial del Turismo y de la Comisión Europea. Para regenerar esas respuestas acerca de las condiciones necesarias y de las vías para transitar hacia un sector del turismo que sea sostenible y resiliente, nos parece que es más pertinente que nunca rescatar la Agenda 2030 y los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, porque vale la pena recordar que el turismo contribuye de una forma directa a varios objetivos de la agenda. Por supuesto, al objetivo 1, al fin de la pobreza, al 8, el trabajo decente, pero también al objetivo 12, producción y consumo sostenibles, o incluso al objetivo 16, porque una sociedad con paz y seguridad es una sociedad que atrae turismo, y las inestabilidades y los conflictos, por el contrario, suelen ser detractores y desincentivadores del turismo. Por eso, si queremos hablar no solo sobre turismo, sino de turismo resiliente y sostenible, debemos tener en cuenta esos elementos, otros elementos de la agenda, ¿no? Como son la agricultura, la alimentación, la construcción, el transporte sostenible, las industrias creativas, etc. Y tampoco debemos olvidar los elementos culturales, porque la sostenibilidad del turismo también se edifica por la conciencia histórica de la población local, que ofrece su patrimonio y sus referencias culturales, que contribuye, por tanto, a la creatividad y al atractivo de los destinos turísticos. Es muy importante, por tanto, que tengamos metodologías y que apostemos por ayudar a los destinos turísticos a hacer más sostenibles sus ofertas y sus recursos. Para ello, SDSN y la Red Española de Desarrollo Sostenible ha editado varias guías para hacer más sostenibles los destinos turísticos, para hacer una autoevaluación y para identificar prioridades de acción para lograr esos 17 ODS, para impulsar y apoyar debates de cuáles son los prioritarios y cómo hacer más sostenibles esos debates turísticos. Nos parece, además, y con esta reflexión quiero acabar, que para garantizar el éxito de la implantación de un modelo de turismo sostenible debe asegurarse la participación activa de todos los agentes implicados en el sector, tanto a escala pública como a escala privada. Por eso hoy hemos querido tener a todos los actores aquí. Es importante hacer una apuesta en red de estos agentes para crear sinergias colaborativas de trabajo, para fomentar intercambio de conocimiento y experiencias, para motivar a otros actores y para hacer, como decía, los destinos de acogida más sostenibles. En línea con esta estrategia, los destinos turísticos deben trabajar en integrar los ODS para lograr su inclusión en las políticas públicas y también para unar esfuerzos para afianzar los principios de sostenibilidad. Y, cómo no, debemos implicar a los propios turistas, a los propios viajeros. Al final son los consumidores, los turistas, quienes deciden un destino u otro en función de sus alicientes. Y esta industria debe tener en cuenta esa apuesta por los principios sostenibles que los propios viajeros y los propios turistas cada vez eligen más y cada vez apuestan más. Por eso la inclusión de los propios turistas y la sensibilización de los propios turistas en la conservación del patrimonio, en la conservación de la biodiversidad de nuestros océanos, es fundamental para un turismo sostenible. Es verdad que hoy no podemos pensar en nuevas aperturas al turismo sin pensar en buenas y en un fortalecimiento de los sistemas sanitarios. Es una experiencia que también vivimos en el Caribe, de la mano del PNUD, desde el Instituto de Salud Global de Barcelona, con un interesantísimo trabajo que hicimos de acompañamiento a los gobiernos para tomar decisiones. La ciencia, el conocimiento acumulado es fundamental para la toma de decisiones políticas, también para las económicas. Y por eso es importante que incorporemos esos resultados científicos, esos resultados de salud y que construyamos esos sistemas de salud como garantía de derechos, pero también como reclamos de destinos turísticos para quienes quieren viajar con seguridad y tener tranquilidad en sus destinos. En definitiva, lo que queremos hoy es convocar una mirada positiva hacia el futuro, convocando a todos los actores y a todas las miradas con una apuesta sostenible y esperando que estos diálogos que estamos promoviendo a partir de este ciclo sirvan para generar un nuevo conocimiento y para incentivar la exploración de prácticas, medidas y políticas innovadoras en la acción por el clima, respetando los derechos de las comunidades locales y de los pueblos indígenas y brindando oportunidades de empleos para jóvenes y mujeres, como es nuestro deseo. Una vez más, gracias por vuestra participación y por vuestro trabajo en este campo.
Generating change, partnerships, best practices, innovation, sustainability. Again, a paradigm shifting set of remarks made by Ms. Larry Pahin. Thank you so much for this dynamic opening remarks. Participants, I know by now your interest has been piqued by these excellent opening remarks. And I know you are so interested at this time to see what is coming up in the next session. And this is why now I give the floor to my dynamic and energetic co-moderator, Anna, to take us through the thought-provoking panel session. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Richard, for passing on the moderation to me. I feel honored to be part of this paradigm shift journey, as you have called it, Richard. And also from my side, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers and, of course, the audience that follows us through Zoom, Facebook Live, UVTV, and other channels. Luis Felipe Lopez Calva and Leire Pahin have underlined the severe challenges that COVID-19 has posed to the tourism sector, particularly to those countries that heavily depend from revenues from the sector, as well as entrepreneurs and all those employed in this branch. We also heard about tourism's tremendous potential to contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Digital instruments are considered key to paving the way toward the financial and economic, the social and climate resilience of the tourism sector. However, in line with the main theme of the World Tourism Day, which was celebrated yesterday, it is essential that the benefits of digital transformation of the tourism sector is enjoyed widely and fairly, and that no one is being left behind as the world begins to open up again. This is the reason why we dedicate today's session to inclusive digital innovation in the tourism sector by means of this panel discussion with 4 distinguished speakers representing different regions, perspectives, and areas of expertise. What comes now is that I will present our today's guests, and I will direct some specific questions to them. After our discussion panel, we will open it towards the dialogue with the audience, which is following us with Zoom. And I cordially invite all the audience which is following us to formulate your questions to one of the speakers in the chat of our Zoom platform. At the same time, I solicit our distinguished speakers to keep your interventions and responses as short and up to the point as possible, so as to allow for dynamic and insightful interaction. Please now allow me to introduce to you, in the order of their interventions, our distinguished guests. First, we will have in our panel discussion Clarisse Modeste-Kerven. She is Minister for Tourism, Civil Aviation, Culture and Cooperatives of Grenada. Apart from her distinguished service as minister, she is also engaged in various civil society and philanthropic initiatives, which include, among others, leadership roles in the Grenada Medical Association, as well as the Foundation for the Prevention of Blindness, the Pan-American Health Organization Assembly, and the World Health Organization. Second, we also extend our warm welcome to Natalia Bayona, who leads the innovation, education, and investment strategy of the World Tourism Organization. To put it shortly, her job is to identify the most disruptive startups and investment projects and connect them with member states and international corporations. She has developed various startup competitions and innovation challenges in support of entrepreneurs and pilots for safe travel. Likewise, she designed the Tourism Tech Adventures Innovation Forums and co-created UNWTO's Tourism Online Academy for the development of skills in the sector. Third, we also have on board Madame Kristi Alamutka. She's an expert on sustainability and digitalization, and she works in the tourism unit of the European Commission Directorate General, Internal Market, Industries, Entrepreneurship, and Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. And fourth, but not last, we also have on board of this panel discussion Robin Russell. He's director at the Deja Resort since 2016 and is also first vice president at the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association. Before joining this tourist association, he managed and owned different restaurants and was also chairman of a transport company. So now I would like to start with welcoming Her Excellency Clarisse Modeste-Kerven. And I would invite you to give a short intervention of about 5 minutes. And it would be great if you could address in your intervention the following question that we have formulated. What national and regional strategies, investments, infrastructure and policies are necessary to drive digital innovation in the tourism sector?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. To Luis Felipe Lopez Calva, good morning to you, sir, and to all of UNDP and to my fellow participants in this panel and to all who are on this platform. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here. It is an honor, and I want to thank UNDP for the invitation. But more so, I want to commend UNDP for the topic. So often we go to meetings and what we hear are lamentations about COVID-19 and how we are suffering. But today I see that we're celebrating opportunities that digitization can offer us and our peoples of the region and of the world to deal with the new normal and to look forward to a very vibrant, how shall I say it, a very vibrant restoration of the tourism industry. So looking at the topic, the words that jump at me are inclusive and innovations. And I've separated them in a few topics, but I don't know how to speak for 5 minutes. I've never learned to, so I'll just skip through some things, but obviously I wrote something that would take 50 minutes or 50 days, but I'll try to keep it 5 minutes. The first thing is government's policy. I will speak to that shortly, and partnerships to get that policy being effected. Access to IT equipment and hardware, access to microfinancing and small business loans, becoming digitally ready, upskilling MSMEs and marketplace technology, and empowerment through data. So I'll start with government's policy. I might be putting my government into trouble, but I believe that national and regional strategies, investments, infrastructure, and policies are necessary to drive digital innovation in the tourism sector. In other words, I believe that governments are responsible for creating the enabling environment for these things to happen. And government doesn't have to do it alone. Government can establish relationships with service providers and form PPEs and work with other regional governments, as we have done within the CARICOM region or the Caribbean region for shared objectives, and also to work with other regional and international organizations such as UNDP, Compete Caribbean, and so on and so on. I must say that UNDP has been very, very a strong support for us in terms of digitization in Grenada. Luis Felipe spoke of one of them, which we are undertaking with Dominica, so I will not go into that. However, they have done a number of other things, and he mentioned the smart state. And so I've seen what other countries have done by developing a smart state program to deal with digitization and to govern their countries with significant successes. And I know that with UNDP assisting, we have already started that process in the relevant department, and I know we will have some successes there. And also digitization in agriculture. Agriculture is critical, as we know. How long can we live without food? But also in agro-tourism. And again, UNDP has been very instrumental in pushing us along that lines. So governments also need to facilitate buy-in from public and private sector in adopting digital technologies. And we will see that statistics will tell us that, especially with the MSME, perhaps the larger businesses, they're well on their way with innovation of digitization. However, with the MSMEs, who are key actors in the tourism value chain, and especially in small island developing states, they represent 90% of the businesses and more than 50% of employment worldwide. We find that there is a significant disparity in the uptake of digitization between these MSMEs and the larger businesses. Also, worthy of note is that though women form 50 to 70% of the tourism workforce. And many of them have tourism businesses. However, technology adoption is lower among females than in male-owned businesses. And therefore, I want to single this out and to ask us to focus on solutions that could assist our women and give them the equality and the equity that they so deserve. I spoke about empowerment through data. We know that the traditional operators, the receptive operators, and the online travel agencies, that they protect their customer data fiercely. And therefore, the small businesses have no sight of that information. And they miss out on opportunities to own the relationship with customers. They miss out on opportunities to add to the customer experience and therefore increase their own revenues. And owning customer data is very critical. And therefore, this topic and what we expect to see happening with the MSMEs is very critical. Training and digital literacy, extremely important. And I think this speaks for itself. And with only maybe 1 minute to go, I don't think I need to go into that. But certainly, there is great need for digital upskilling and e-commerce training, such as how to work with online travel agents, such as Google Hotels for small hotels, SMEs, and so on. And there are several examples worldwide that have had successes. And I think we need to maybe steal some pages from the book, but also be innovative and come up with what is more relevant and specific for our region. One other thing I wanted to say is that earlier this year, we had a regional policy dialogue, again hosted by UNDP. And it brought together the policymakers, the entrepreneurs, regional tourism practitioners virtually to discuss the future of Caribbean tourism. And there again, we had a number of takeaways that I know for myself has assisted us and guided us on the pathway, but I'm also grateful for the continued support of UNDP. There are some positives that we have seen. So for example, we've seen a high penetration of smartphones in the region, estimated at about 75%. So in terms of devices, we do have a significant amount. And there has been fundamental changes taking place within the Eastern Caribbean. So for example, the DCash system has been initiated. And we're speaking about MSMEs. Many, and the percentage is significant, but many of our small businesses and medium and micro businesses, they do not have the significant bank account from which to have credit card accounts and to do their transactions. And therefore, the Eastern Caribbean currency dollar has utilized this, the process of digital cash, whereby it allows the small person, small business person to carry out transactions without a bank account. And Grenada has implemented that. I know some other islands in the Caribbean have done likewise. And I think that this is a major game changer for our small businesses, because without that, they have to relegate to cash transactions, check transactions. And as we know, every tourist has as a priority safety. And the physical transactions in this day and age is not desirable. And therefore, the more that our small businesses can conduct their businesses digitally, it will be so much better for them. I know my time is up. I just wanted to speak of one other thing, and I'm looking for that. In terms of government policy, I want to say that in terms of the support we have received, this has come a long way, but we are at the point where we are looking at implementation. We need to start implementing the new tourism concept within a new COVID context, recognizing that COVID will not go away in the near future. God knows when it will go away. but recognizing that we have to restore livelihoods, even as we save lives from COVID. And therefore, we need as a region to work more closely together, to support each other where there are areas that we can have collaborative effort. And then each one of us too can forge our own pathways as is relevant to our own peoples, so that indeed and in fact, we can have digital and inclusive innovations to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I believe the Caribbean is well on its way to doing that. We've had so many successes in this difficult time, but there's a long way to go. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Clarice Modeste-Curwen, for your first reply to one of our questions. I think you stressed very well the importance of MSMEs and also of game changers, such as transaction without the need of bank accounts, for example, and also the need for improvements and boosting of digital literacy. Before coming to our second invited guests to the session, I would just like to mention that due to other commitments that both of our directors and presidents have, Mr. Luis Felipe Lopez Calpa and also Leire Pahin, they will not be able to stay with us until the end of the session. So please excuse themselves on behalf. I am excusing themselves on behalf of them. And now I pass the floor to Natalia Bayona. She's Director of Innovation, Education, and Investments at the World Tourism Organization. I would also like to ask Natalia to just briefly, within a short intervention, address the following question. What are some of the new and emerging trends in digital innovations in tourism?
Thanks a lot, Anna. It's my pleasure to be here today. And of course, before I start, I would like to thank to Leire and of course to Luis Felipe and to Her Excellency the Minister, and of course to the UNWTO, to the UNDP and UNWTO team. UNDP is our sister agency, so of course, I'm more than pleased to be here with you today, sharing our thoughts regarding digitalization. So, Anna, I have to say that, of course, the pandemic has helped us to understand that innovation and digitalization are here to stay. First of all, because tourism dropped by 74% and foreign direct investments decreased and dropped by 74%. Nonetheless, I have some good news for the techies that tourism innovation investments increased during COVID-19 times. So tourism innovation and technology investments grew by $22 billion last year. And I have to say that, of course, the most important technologies that are used in tourism are augmented reality, virtual reality, clean tech, health tech, that's obvious. And of course, everything related to mobility and wearables, Internet of Things. Those are the most used technologies in tourism. But I have to say that, of course, these good news are joined by some challenges. The first one is regarding online education. As you know, tourism is the top employer of youth and women. Nonetheless, 50% of youth working in tourism, they desire to become an entrepreneur, but they only have secondary skills. So if we want a technological sector, if we want to empower youth through the use of technology and startups, by far, we need to empower online education. That's why last year we created the Tourism Online Academy. And Anna, just in 1 year, we got 15,000 students from more than 100 countries. So that's an answer about how challenging is education in our sector. Second of all, I have to say that regarding new technologies, you know that the tourism chain is a very big chain and is one of the most complete economic chains. So of course, tourism is about manufacturing, it's about goods, it's about gastronomy, it's about events, it's about technology. But when you analyze the whole picture of the whole tourism sector, I have to say that 50% of the investments are only focused in mobility, lifestyle, and transport. And of course, so there's where we got there, Uber, and of course Airbnb and some of small experiences, but we need a lot to cover, for example, in B2B, in digitalization, in having more digitalization in SMEs, as the minister said. And when you see the flows of investments, I have to say that 80% of investments on technology and innovation, so when it comes to startups and venture capital, they are concentrated in the US, in China, Germany, India, Spain, and France. But here the question is, where is Latin America and where is the Caribbean? That this is the region of youth. This is the region where there's a lot of talent. Nonetheless, the flows of investments are not coming here. And when you see the parallelism with the creation of technological ventures, it happens the same. The top ventures and the top startups are developed in the US, in China, and in the top countries when it comes to tourism that are, of course, the European markets. So here the challenge is huge because as our Secretary General Guterres says, we cannot leave anyone behind. But for that, we need the power of online education to help youth to have new skills, update the skills, and update the curricula where deep technologies has to be mandatory in order to help them to create different innovations, and of course, to create the national and regional innovation ecosystems where those startups can feel that they can look for some public advice or for some acceleration supports through the private sector. And in that way, of course, we can recover the sector and rebound it again.
Thank you very much, Natalia. You made a really, really strong point for boosting capacity building and education of the young generation, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I guess this is also a very good bridge to our next guest, Kirsti Ala-Mutka, because she represents the European Union here on this panel. And I would like to ask her, in your presentation, could you please address the following question: which strategic partnerships are or would be integral and necessary to advancing digital transformation in the tourism sector, both in the EU, but also in LAC, in the Latin American and Caribbean region?
Anna, and thank you for the invitation to this occasion, to this important possibility to discuss with you in this interesting and an important panel of these very, very relevant aspects. In the European Union, tourism is seen as one of the key industrial ecosystems that is composing of several sectors and a very diverse system of actors, of which, as said already, many are very small enterprises. So our industrial strategy update recognizes that there's need to accelerate the green transition and the digital transition of all the industrial ecosystem, but the tourism should be given priority because it was hit and suffered very hard during the COVID pandemic. So we have started this work now by showing the way to the other ecosystems and by trying to benefit from the recovery after the COVID crisis for the transition towards a more sustainable and more resilient future. So we think that in order to create transition, we we must collaborate and create collaboration with the stakeholders. And we are currently working in a very intensive stakeholder consultation process to produce a transition pathway for tourism towards the end of this year. And our idea of this co-creation process is to recognize jointly targets and actions by the different stakeholders on the European level, national level, regional level, on the destination management organizations, and by the industry and SME themselves, so that they would each act and plan together what would be their role for progressing towards jointly agreed targets. So these are the kind of practical level partnerships that we would need in order to create the work program for the European tourism agenda for 2030. So this is one element of the partnerships that need to exist, the collaboration and concrete collaboration and joint agreements with the different stakeholders. The digital transition is also in Europe automatically based into the context of the broader digital transformation strategy of the European society and economy. And there we have several actions that relate, for example, to policy reforms of digital data sharing and platform economy, which are very important for tourism. And then the specific cardinal points of the digital compass, which is the improvement of skills, infrastructures, digital transformation of businesses, and digitalization of public services, supported by the digital citizenship, so that everybody would have access to information, rights to privacy, and capacity to set up new businesses. So all of these are, again, very relevant for tourism and for the digital transition of the tourism ecosystems. And special partnerships are developed for each of the key aspects. For example, partnerships for skills, for reskilling and upskilling the workers and SMEs. International partnerships are another important issue that needs to be considered. And if we are thinking of the European Union and its collaboration with the Latin American regions, then we must remember that our digital transformation strategies also include the elements that relate to the international aspect. So the external cooperation instruments, regulatory cooperation, and research and education cooperation, among others, are elements how we are acting in partnership between the Europe and the Latin American region. There, for example, the research and education aspects could concretely be used for supporting projects in tourism and digitalization and development of tourism. And as a third aspect, I wanted to mention that we also see it very important on the practical level to support strategically the sharing of best practices. So in the EU, we have this thing, what we call European Capital of Smart Tourism Awards. So we select a few excellent destinations in a year, which are showing sustainability, accessibility, digitalization, and cultural heritage best practices, so that we can make them visible, we can promote them, and then in the end create networks between destinations where they are sharing best practices. This is very important, this type of facilitation, best practice sharing, and there's a very good example on national level as well. In Spain, maybe you already know, they have the network of Destino Turístico Inteligente, which is actually a network of criteria for recognizing intelligent destinations that meet the criteria of governance, innovation, technology, sustainability, and accessibility. And this is supported by norms that have been agreed on national level. So this is, again, excellent way of supporting, taking up and sharing of best practices strategically. And what is very good is that we can actually see that in Argentina, there is a very similar approach, Red Argentina de Destinos Turísticos Inteligentes, that has been, that is developing very similar approach. So this already proves that some examples that we have in Europe on national level could also be applied and used in Latin America. So basically, to summarize my aspect, I wanted just to say that it's very important to strategically build collaboration between the different levels of tourism actors for the joint digital transition. As a second point, the digital transition in tourism needs to be linked to the broader digital transformation policies and the partnerships developed in that context. And then it is important to establish strategic frameworks for best practice exchanges and take up by the tourism actors themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame Alamutka. I think you also gave us a very small but very important input into what is needed to create the ecosystems of which Natalia Bayona was also talking about. The ecosystems that are needed to really create the ground, to prepare the ground to entrepreneurs to be becoming engaged, to investors to become engaged. Public investments are needed and public services need to be improved. Skills, again, as Natalia also mentioned, and also our minister mentioned from Granada. And also you mentioned the need to create alliances and to learn from best practices and to create these networks among interesting destinies and all the actors involved. I think this is very important. And now I would like to also build a bridge to our fourth panelist, Mr. Robin Russell, the first Vice President of the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, and also give him the floor of about 5 minutes. And please, could you address the following question? What role can digital innovations play in transforming Caribbean tourism and make it more inclusive?
Thank you. Welcome to panelists and everyone here. And thank you for the opportunity to present on this very, very important topic. As a small business operator and owner, one of the main problems that I faced when I first came into the business 20, 30 years ago was the access to market. You know, how do you advertise to somebody in Spain when you're in a small country like Jamaica or Costa Rica and you have 5 rooms? Because and back then it was through newspapers, radios, TV, travel magazines, trade shows that, you know, your country would put on throughout the world. But all of those things are expensive. Larger properties are able to do it because they're able to spread those costs over the amount of rooms that they have. However, in the last 5-10 years, we've seen where digital transformation has allowed smaller properties or smaller tours or, you know, anything that wants to be out there, access to market. And that access is cheaper, it is scalable, and it is easier if you're educated and able to maneuver in that digital world. And I speak to things like a virtual trade show. COVID has taught us now that you don't need to go globe hopping all over the world to meet travel agents, to meet with DMOs, to introduce them to your property. You know, the Jamaica Tourist Board in here has done an excellent job in doing virtual trade shows where, you know, through platforms like JPEX, where they invite the tour operators to online platforms and we meet them online. We introduce them through virtual tours of the property, 3D tours. And these things give people a great opportunity to see your product. There's social media. You know, you have people that have millions of followers, and you can also develop your own social media platforms. You can also get into Google Ads, which are a lot cheaper and a lot more sustainable than trying to buy a full page ad in the Wall Street Journal, and you can't afford it because you have 5 rooms. The online travel agencies, the OTAs, which charge you a percentage of your sales. So instead of needing a lot of capital to get into a big marketing campaign, they do it for you. In fact, they're the largest advertisers in the tourism industry as we speak, you know, spending millions and billions of dollars advertising. So use their money to market your property. Figure out, and that's what we have done now, is figuring out how do we rank high with them, that when somebody searches a platform, we're on top of that platform or we're close to the top. And all of this is just, you know, it's just learning little innovative things to do. I think the world has changed and experiences have changed. and persons are looking for experiences more in their travel. So the more unique, the more interesting you can make your experience and marketing out there, it is possible. What I would also say is Jamaica has also set up something called ALEX, which is an agricultural linkage platform. And it connects our farmers to our hotels, where it is a commodities platform where they can actually put their goods online and our purchasing persons can see it and purchase it directly from the farmer. These are things that, although it has been set up, I don't think it has been used enough. And this is where education needs to come in. And you know, a farmer in rural Jamaica is not very versed in digital technology, but this is where it is needed, where education is needed to get these people involved. A simple statistic shows that there is a way to get it done. 20 years ago, 50% of persons on a cruise ship pre-booked their tour. Now we're seeing where 35% of those persons are pre-booking their tour. Where are these people going and how are these people learning about experiences in the Caribbean, in Latin America, in wherever they should go? And I think they're learning through social media, through doing their own research, and that is an opportunity for us. What COVID has taught small businesses or small to medium-sized businesses is, we definitely want the middleman. We definitely want those persons that can go out and sell our property, but do we need them? And I don't think we need them again as much as we used to. 20 years ago, you used to have to speak to a cruise director or somebody to get somebody to come into your restaurant and buy a beer. Now, with proper pictures and a proper website and Google Ads and social media, you're able to reach that customer. And that is the key to how we're going to get a solid, inclusive tourism model, that wherever you are, whatever you're selling, you're able to market it to the world. You're able to market it to millions of people by just putting that one picture or that one video online. So I think that's my 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Russell, for your really, really insightful examples. This is precisely the next question I would like to head to, and this would be another 4 minutes for Her Excellency Clarice Modeste Kerwin, our minister from Grenada, to expose a little bit more perhaps on interesting examples from her experience of digital innovations which have curbed or which have the potential to curb social inclusion. Please, Minister, you feel free to share some examples on this question with us.
Thank you. I'm glad you said feel free, because these 4 minutes are killing me, but never mind, this time I'll take my time. I have one instance, one situation that I find stands out to me, and one might wonder, how is it tourism related? But if we're talking sustainable, we have to look at succession. And therefore, I'm going to speak to a project that we do, a program actually, that the Ministry of Education has for its students at this time. We are all aware that with COVID, a number of children couldn't go to school in every country, I think for some period of time, some longer, some shorter, but they've had that difficulty. But the Ministry of Education started to come up with a digital program to educate, to do distance learning for their children, because what they found is that many of our students were weak in English and maths. And therefore, they got together a group of teachers who had these fields as their strengths, English, maths, so that they could teach island-wide, countrywide. And so they've started putting the structure in place because, of course, you have to have your devices, you have to have a program, and that's what that's how the Minister for Education told me. You have to have devices, you have to have program, you have to have your connectivity, and so on. And this started before COVID, so that when COVID came, while we didn't have everything in place, it was easier to move things along because there was the infrastructure already there. And so now our schools are still closed, but our students from kindergarten, which is about probably what, 5, 6 years? Or no, it's earlier, because somewhere 3 or 4, until the end of their secondary school, where they end about 15, 16 years. All of the work is being done online, and they have not missed a bit. So that last year in the external exams, the students did by and large pretty well, comparable to how they would have performed in non-COVID times. And I feel very good about that, because a 14, 15, 16-year-old student can certainly teach his parents in a small business, a fisherman, a farmer, a street vendor, how to use digital devices and how to use that to their advantage. And also, it's not only the devices, but the connectivity, so that all schools are connected, all public buildings are connected in Grenada at this time. I think we've completed that, so that persons can find a hotspot. And so while it was primarily targeting school children, it is also facilitating older persons in the community, so that they too can learn the importance of digitization. I think that is so important. And when I started with my cellular phone and I saw so many apps and so many things, I too felt daunted, I must confess. And gradually, because the demand was there, you had to do so many things. First of all, when we had a little bit of lockdown, you had to do your cabinet meetings by Zoom or whatever medium that was used, whatever platform. And so we had to learn by force. And so the COVID situation, while it is bad in general, has forced us to some situations or to perform differently. And we see the benefits of it. I've heard the speaker before me speak about marketing. And now we have some women's organizations to help women, help fishermen, farmers, because during the COVID time, there was very little airlift and cargo couldn't go out. So we assisted the fishermen to find local markets. So we put supplier to the purchaser. And that is working in a small way, but it is the beginning of a very, what I would say, a very lucrative business for small industries. So I wanted to speak to this too, because I think if we educate our children, then they too can educate others. Because when I must confess, when I have difficulties, I call one of the little girls and the little boys and say, how do you do that? And they know it is as though they were born with that skill. So I think our government has done a very good investment in training those students. And also, we have been using it in various ways to assist our farmers with their produce. And I think that is, this is the story. These are the two stories I would like to tell. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before giving the floor to my co-moderator, Richard, and to let in some questions from our audience, I would like to direct the same question to Ms. Alamutke. Would you have for us an example from the European side on digital innovations that promote social inclusiveness?
Actually, I thought that this would be something that would be better to show than to explain. So I would have a video that I have sent to you that describes results of a co-funded project that increases accessibility for disabled people. So please show that. The sound is not audible.
Okay, it seems that it was difficult to get the audio online. We saw the video, but perhaps we can give it another try. But meanwhile, perhaps you could just explain what was being promoted in this video.
Well, yeah, if you can show it even better, but there we see, and this is a thing that we often think nowadays, digital only as internet, but digital is still many other things as well that can be done with technologies. Here we see a technological solution that has been developed for disabled people to be able to, okay, now you will hear it.
Yes.
The beauty of Cypriot beaches is well known. What is less common knowledge is how they are increasingly accessible for people with reduced mobility. Avros is paraplegic, and he uses an app to find these beaches adapted to his needs.
Of course you need the paths because it's not easy to roll in the sand. You cannot roll in the sand with a wheelchair.
Here, thanks to the European project Armis 2, there are now ramps, rest areas and a remote-controlled wheelchair on rails. This gives people of restricted mobility fully independent access to the sea.
If you don't have equipment or machines like this, you need help from other people to get in the water. They have to carry you. Some people don't like to get help from others. Some are not feeling well asking for help. So being able to use this machine on your own, you feel free and independent again.
5 beaches in Cyprus and 2 in Syros in Greece are part of this inclusive tourism project. The total budget is just under €600,000, over 84% of which was provided by the European Union's cohesion policy. As well as access ramps and relaxation areas, the project offers 24 free-for-use wheelchairs for the sand and 7 sea-track chairs. These chairs are made of stainless steel to resist the marine environment. The sea-track itself can be assembled and dismantled in a few hours, and it is powered by an off-the-grid solar panel.
A solar panel is the ideal solution because, first of all, it's green, no impact on the environment. Second, we have to use the sun, not to depend on the grid. You don't want to stay out of power when a guy in a chair goes into the sea and the device stops because of loss of power.
Another of the project's challenges was to convince the local authorities of the importance of investing in such facilities. George is in charge of the beaches here in Paralimni. He says they have boosted tourism in the area.
The installation of these systems has attracted people with mobility issues, not only from Cyprus, but also from abroad. They're known about now, so people with family members with reduced mobility come here. This service that we provide is advertised and people are attracted by it and they come here for this reason.
On average, 15 people with reduced mobility use these facilities every day.
Thank you very much for sharing this very, very interesting example. Now, looking a little bit at the clock, I would like to pass on the word to my co-moderator, Richard, who has collected jointly with UNDP colleagues several questions from the Q&A section. Please, Richard.
Thank you, Anna. Our distinguished panelists have done so well that we will reward them with a few questions from the audience. And the first awardee goes to, I think I will give the first award to Kirsty, Miss Alamutka. You are the first awardee. How do we manage to integrate the efforts made so far in the digitalization of tourism with our own tourist areas, where sometimes it is not possible to access this service? Is accompaniment from the government needed in this regard? Did I go too fast?
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully understood, but I think I have an answer anyway, because this shows now exactly what we are discussing when we are developing the transition pathway with all the different stakeholders. Because for example, digitalization of SMEs or whatever actor we are needed, it cannot be done only in one way. There needs to be a collaboration. In Europe, it happens so that there are some programs that are supported by the European Union, but a lot of actually what happens is done on the regional level. It is partially cohesion policies, partially regional policies that are giving to the local development offices funding that can then be regionally be decided to be used for tourism or to use be, for example, other types of SMEs. So yes, there should be funding available, but it's very important that it's also coordinated in what is given on a higher level and what is regionally needed for different things.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Alamutka. And our second award goes to none other than the Minister, Minister Clarice Modeste. A question from the audience. This one says, how can we manage to control pollution since it's driven so much by the tourism sector? And also the tourist that travels actually carry the virus. How can we avoid this to happen again? What controls can be taken by the government? Over to you, Minister.
Thank you. Let me take the second part first, about tourists who travel do have the virus. What we do have are protocols. And sometimes the persons, and being the Minister for Tourism is not easy at this time, because some of the persons in the tourism sector think that our protocols are too onerous. And so we have to walk a tight line. How onerous do you make it, or how stringent do you make it and still get tourists to come into your country? So our protocols, they require for entry that you have a test within 72 hours, and it is a PCR test, which is the most reliable of all the different tests for the COVID virus, and that 24 hours after coming into the country, that if you are fully vaccinated, 24 hours after coming into the country, you do another test, and if you're negative, then you're free to roam. This has worked pretty well for us, but every once in a while, you will find somebody who is positive after that 24 hours of being into the country, because that is the nature of this devious, what shall I call it? I don't even know if it's they say it's not alive, but sometimes it behaves as though it's got a brain to attack human beings. But never mind, this devious microorganism, it can come on afterwards. But we've had a few cases, and when we compare the number of local, because at this point we are in community transmission, and when we compare the amount of community transmissions we have as compared to persons coming in positive, I think that the risk is minimal enough, because since COVID has been here with us for almost 2 years, and we expect it's going to be for a while. If we got to start back tourism, we have to start, and we have to start the safest way possible, but there's no 100%. So I think our protocols are pretty good. If we want to have tourism exist and bring back livelihoods, is a significant number of our population who have been displaced and continue to be displaced from their jobs. We have to have that kind of balance. So I do not think, based on the statistics, that persons coming in are the major issue. Right now, our issue is the community spread to friends and people not observing the protocols and so on. The other question was in terms of, can you remind me, please?
I think you actually, in a way, answered the entire question, because the stress was really on those persons that are possibly carrying the virus into the country. So
okay, so that was what the pollution referred to.
Yes.
I thought it was the other type of pollution. So yes, that is what it is. The numbers are much smaller than what we see in the community.
Thank you so much. You well-deserved award. And Mr. Russell, please don't feel left out. We have an award for you. Final question to you. Would it be possible to organize virtual visits with links that visitors can try and visit from their spaces, apparently digital tourism, in case of future pandemic risks? What do you think about that?
What makes the Caribbean special is touch and feel. We are a warm people when it speaks of Caribbean and Latin America, and people want to come and experience that sunshine. But what I think is that virtual experience is what will get persons to visit where we are and drive tourism, because the key to tourism is employment. The key to tourism is driving economies and allowing countries to do better. So having these virtual tours, yes, they are useful. It's like having a virtual stage show, a virtual show. Yes, you can watch the act, but does that translate to generating revenue for your country? No. What we need is for those persons to be on flights. We need those persons to be in hotel rooms. We need those persons to be taking taxis and experiencing the food and the culture of our region. And we want to use that virtual tour. We want to use, and I use this as an example. My example would be, Anna, this conference. For me to have come to a conference, the UNDP would have mean me flying to New York and going to a hotel. But now I am able, with another 200 participants, plus how many participants on, whatever platform, Zoom, Facebook and YouTube, to experience this and, to learn and to figure out how we move forward. And that's the only way to go. We started at zero. A lot of us, Minister, I feel your pain being a Minister of Tourism in this time. At one point, you were probably the star, and now you are at the bottom of the totem pole, advocating for growth. But what is important is that we started from zero and we built back stronger. We built back leaner. We're building back with a resilience and a need to move forward as a unit, not leaving anybody behind, but pushing forward together. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Russell. Do we have time for one more? I might not. I think I'm going to give the floor over to Anna, my co-moderator. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Richard. I will just keep up the last words of Mr. Russell. We have jointly tried to seek for solutions to build up stronger, to build up cleaner, to build up more resiliently our tourism sectors in our countries. I think this is just the path forward. Thank you very much for all of you, Mr. Russell, Ms. Alamutka, Minister Modeste, Natalia Bayona, for participating in this inauguration of what is actually a cycle of 5 events on resilient tourism, which jointly the EU-LAC Foundation and UNDP will be implementing throughout the upcoming 2 months. We will dedicate each of the sessions to a specific topic, and the upcoming event will be on October 15th on health resilience of the tourism sector. So this were already somehow touched upon in this session, but we will dive deeper in this topic in the upcoming session. Please, I also would like to thank the audience for staying with us throughout the 1.5 hours of dialogue. Thank you also for your engagement and your interaction in the chat room and the questions that you raised. Thank you also to everyone who is participating through other channels, for example, UBTV or Facebook Live. Please note that the recordings of all the sessions will be available also to the audience afterwards on the social media channels and the websites of UNDP and the EU-LAC Foundation. And also what we strive to do is to really filter all the important conclusions, examples, arguments, that and statements that the experts invited to the sessions bring forward. We will collect them and produce a policy brief as a result of this cycle of events. So there is a path forward, and I invite all of you to join us again in the upcoming sessions. Thank you very much for your attention, and please stay safe.